Today on BCPOV, we ride step-ups, step-downs, and jumps. It's gonna be a good day. Last week, my wife and I rode at a place called Camp Murphy. It was a bit cross-country, but they did well with the terrain and they had some pretty fun jump lines. But now we're going north to what has to be the best place for jumps in Florida. We're going to a place called the Grapefruit Trails. Named after the grapefruits that grow here, this place is pretty special. But like the rest of Florida, there's very little elevation here, and that's not the only limitation either. The other is space. If you look at the trails from above, you'll see that they're placed on a very narrow piece of land. With subdivisions on the left, a river on the right, and almost no elevation, the builders have to be extremely creative when building trails here. With these constraints came innovation. Yuka and I have come here with the goal of improving our jumping skills. For me, this is very much needed as I had some major mental block a few weeks earlier. As you may have seen on my wife's channel, we visited a private bike park called Jared's Place. The jumps were fairly advanced, and I wasn't even able to do the easiest one in the park. It was an extremely frustrating experience, so I'm determined to get more comfortable on these steep, lippy gap jumps. Can't commit to it. With the lay of the land being completely foreign to us, we explored a little to find something to warm up on. Okay. I should be able to do this one. That one's a little big. The first jump wasn't too bad, and logically, if you can clear the first, it should set you up for the next. But that second one is pretty lippy. Oh.
I taste it.
This guy made it work with his hardtail.
Beautiful.
But it'll be a bit harder with the bike I'm riding. Speaking of which, today I'm riding my Norco Range 29er Enduro bike. With its long geometry, big wheels and suspension, this bike is great for going fast on chunky, rough terrain. But for dirt jumping, well, it's doable, but you gotta work a little harder for it. Back at the jump, I'm pretty confident I can do it. Just a few more tries. Okay, should have that. Ooh. Oh.
I jumped too far. I jumped too far.
You okay?
Yeah.
Okay, we better come back to this one. We move on to something a little more within my skill set. Just over the hill, there's a roll into a tabletop jump to a gap into a berm. This should work a little better for me and my bike. That's much better. Just adjacent to that line, there was another line called the 6-pack. Each gap jump has its own lip and landing for a total of 6. A 6-pack. The first one is pretty easy, the second is a little harder, and the third is the trickiest. After that, there's a step down to berm to jump where you have to land on an angle. This line came pretty easy to me actually, but once I got Yuka to film me, all of a sudden I started messing up.
What? What?
The jump at the end was pretty interesting too. I never got it quite perfect, but I did learn to lean my bike to match the angle of the landing. Sick. As we continued along, there were a couple of features that you might see at a lift access bike park. A step down, do a couple of tabletop jumps. If you can clear these, you're well on your way to being able to ride the jumps at Whistler. At this point, we looped back a little and we found a feature that really got into my head. This drop with a turn right before it. It's probably about 6 feet to the transition, and for whatever reason, my brain said no. Oh well, I guess it's just another thing to work on. Directly after that, we've got what is probably the biggest feature at Grapefruit Trails. A pretty sizable wall ride. We are actually a little nervous to hit this one though. Earlier in the week we met a new friend, Nick at Carter Road. Well, he actually broke his leg on this wall ride and he has the scars and screws to prove it. To make sure we don't end up like Nick, we go in pretty tentatively. But Yuka ended up going in a little more aggressively than she expected. And that was enough to scare her into not doing it again. I managed to get off the end at a decent height, but the thought of Nick's injury weighed heavy. After a few more jumps along the way, we're back to where we started. That jump that Yuka crashed on. With all those other jumps I hit earlier, I should be able to get this one now, right?
Oh, I can do it! Okay. Yeah! I did it! I nose cased a little bit. Just like tap tap. It wasn't that scary. Sweet.
3 times. Only 1 time is just a miracle.
Is that it? Just once is a miracle? Okay.
She's right. If you clear a feature, go back and do it again to cement it into your memory.
Oh yes.
And finally, I got to complete that line with that weird log jump thingy at the start.
Yeah!
Back up at the hill, we're at a trail that they call the Pro Line. It's a step up onto a table. And if you know anything about this channel, you'll know that I've had some issues with step-ups in the past. But that's exactly the reason why I'm here. I need to overcome these mental blocks.
Oh, that was stupid.
But before we drop in, one of the locals gives us the beta.
It's actually quite easy.
Yeah.
Because the speed that you need for that drop is all you can pretty much generate from here to there.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You can, when you land on the, after the drop, I usually get like 1 pedal stroke in just for peace of mind.
Okay.
And that's plenty of speed to pop you up on top.
Okay.
Before I send the whole thing, I want to make sure I get the drop first, and then I'll send the step up.
All right, I got the drop. I just have to commit to the step up. Well, can I at least follow you through to the step up?
Yeah.
And then I'll probably chill after that and just see what it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, ready?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That wasn't so bad. Now that I've figured it out, Yuka wants to be towed in.
Ready?
For the next feature, we headed to the other end of the park to probably what is the biggest jump line in the whole area. It's about 8 or 9 jumps in a row, each getting more difficult than the last. I tried to follow some locals in, but I just ended up wrecking their jumps.
Oops. I'm wrecking them a little bit.
Better call it quits before I do any more damage. But on the other side, there's an older set of gap jumps. The first one is probably the biggest, but you can skip the first 2 and ride the smaller third jump to get a feel for things. Eventually I got the courage to try the first one. And Yuka wasn't far behind.
Ooh, nice.
After a bunch of laps, I was able to string the whole thing together. In the end, we spent more than 5 hours at the park and we had a ton of fun here. Where I come from in Vancouver, we don't really have jumps, just a whole bunch of technical trails. So it was really nice to be able to practice on some properly built jumps. I will say, however, it's good to have some jumping skills before you come here. The jumps are mostly gaps and often have really steep, lippy takeoffs that require more skill. There are a few beginner jumps around, but nothing that really bridges that gap to the bigger jumps. But, as always, thanks for watching and stay gnarly.